Manx Radio's 1 to 3, tended by Ramsey Garden Centre.
This is slightly suggestive. Do you have a watershed on Manx Radio? Right, the title is A Clergyman and His Feathered Friend. The Reverend Cornelius Quirky dreamed one night that he married a turkey. They curled in a nest with his head on her breast, and next morning he woke feeling perky.
Howard will be so proud of that limerick. Valerie, we're here talking about a forthcoming publication. This is something that's a bit of a departure from what people might normally expect from you in the sort of literary realm. Tell me what it is you've produced.
Well, this is jointly with my young friend Howard Caine, with whom you are very familiar. It's a book of comic poetry, which we are going to sell in aid of 4 local charities: Beach Buddies, CROSSROADS, Housing Matters and the Wildlife Trust. And we've put together 84 pages of very silly poems, which we hope will entertain people. We're going to give each of the charities 100 copies of the printed book, and then it's up to them. They will sell it as and when they like, to raise funds. So we can do with all the support we can get.
So it's bringing joy in so many ways, because not least the content, but also because, of course, it's going to support these charities. But I mentioned it's a bit of a departure, because I think you previously, you do write, and obviously you've written many, many books yourself. This is actually the first poetry you've written as well, not least comic poetry.
Yes, I started about 18 months ago, and I mean, this is very weird. It was a very difficult time of my life, and I started writing these very silly poems to cheer myself up. And I've got quite a lot of friends who are also going through difficulties, so I just used to write them for myself and then email them to other people, and it made people laugh. So most of mine are based on real but extremely unlikely newspaper headlines. As you know, I used to be a journalist, so I'm rather devoted to newspaper headlines. And if you go onto a news app, you get these headlines where the story is lurking behind a paywall. And there are certain people, including Rupert Murdoch, to whom I wouldn't dream of giving any money. So I made up the story and wrote the poem to the headline without knowing what the actual story was behind it.
And there's some very entertaining ones. Give the listeners out there a little idea of what they might expect from your poems.
Well, shall I read you a very short one?
Yes, I'd love to hear one. Go on, read one for us.
Right, now this was a headline in The Independent in June this year. A woman files for divorce from husband after discovering he was tightening jar lids. So here's the poem. Courting, he was flirty, and she didn't mind the squirty ketchup resting in the fridge, even if she could never open it. Married, mayonnaise drove her crazy, screwed down tightly so that she could never open it. Later, she would slam her fist down on the jam, shouting, "Helen, blast and damn," because she could never open it. The judge ruled their marriage to have been invalid.
Invalid, it's so clever. And you know what, I can see how this would bring you much joy as well, because the wordplay is fantastic when you're writing comic poems, and you love words, don't you?
I absolutely adore words. I think this is my trouble. My head is bursting with words all the time, so they have to come out somehow, and this is the way they've come out.
And you said it was when you're obviously going through a difficult time, so have you found the process of this helpful to you?
Yes, it's a very quick fix, and then you have to write another one very soon after. It doesn't last you for months or anything. But it definitely is a kind of release of tension, I think. And, cheers you up, cheers other people up.
It does. And you've collaborated with, as you mentioned, our very own Howard Caine. How did this come about?
Well, Howard, as you know, has been writing silly poetry for years and years and years. We're very old friends. He worked for me about 30 years ago or more, I think. And he says that this book was my idea. I think it was his. We can't quite agree on this. But sometime last winter, the suggestion came up that I think it was after I'd seen him performing, one of his poems at a live event, which he quite frequently does. So we just decided to put it together and do it in aid of charity.
And have you had any sort of influence on the sort of poems that he's put in there?
No, not at, well, he has a tendency towards the scatological, you might say, and I've had to rein him in occasionally, but I've tried not to do that too much.
Potholes, by me. Oh, to be a pothole lurking on the Isle of Man, causing havoc for the motorist in car or bus or van, feeling rather small to start, but knowing I'll grow bigger, there's not a hope in hell that I'll be filled in by a digger. Oh, to be a pothole on a major road or street, buggering up suspensions or knackering people's feet, feeling happy in my job as knowing not much later I'll no longer be a pothole, I'll have grown into a crater. Oh, to be a pothole, but not for the TT, as it's dangerous if you hit one when you're doing 190. So if you're living on the course, your life looks rather black, just autumn through to latest spring, and then you'll be tarmac. But elsewhere on the island, life is long and gay and free, with most holes living 10 years, some up to 23. As if you're on a main road used by thousands every day, no one gives a monkeys, it's just part of life, they say. Tyres are made for shredding and alloys made to scratch. Shock absorbers love to jolt while paint jobs love a patch. If we didn't have our potholes, the DOI all think, there'd be less work for our garages, the economy would shrink. So, if you don't like potholes, take action pretty soon. Move to somewhere smoother, like the surface of the moon. Try living on the TT course from June to MGP, or sell your car and buy a tank and flatten all you see.
But it's not just about poems, is it? You've got some beautiful artwork.
Well, Pete Hearsey is going to do is doing some drawings to illustrate it at the moment. And Ruth Sutherland, bless her, has done a cover design for us, which is appropriately extremely colourful and garish and silly. So hope that'll attract lots of people.
And this is the second project where you have, that I know of anyway, where you are essentially giving all of the proceeds to charity.
Yes.
And you've mentioned a few of the charities there. Why is this important to you?
I can't see the point in doing things just to sell it and make a little bit of money for yourself. Well, perhaps I'm in a fortunate position that I don't need to do that. So it seemed a good idea. As you say, I collaborated a couple of years ago with another old friend, Ian Coulson, on Douglas in Passing, for which he did artwork and I wrote it. That was much more heavyweight in that it required a lot of research, which I enjoyed very much at the time. But I think my attention span's got a bit shorter since then, so it's much easier to write silly poems.
And how do you choose the charities that you want to support?
Partly through personal, there were ones where, friends of mine were involved or something already. We did ask a couple. I won't tell you who it was, but one to whom we offered it turned us down on the basis that the poems were too adult.
That makes me want to buy it immediately.
Exactly. But they didn't want to risk it.
That's fantastic. Well, we mentioned that all of the monies will be going to these charities, and you have a target you want to try and hit. But in order to do that, you need to get the thing produced in the first place. So that's what we're talking to you about at the moment, because you're looking for support there, aren't you?
Yes. We need £2,000 to produce it, and we've got about 1,250 already. So we desperately need a bit more. We started approaching companies that I think a lot of, particularly retail companies nowadays, are really struggling and can't afford to give to charity. So any individual who might like to cough up £50, we would be very pleased. Perhaps you could liaise with them on my behalf.
I think we could do that for you, yes. And do you have a sort of deadline or a target for when you want this to be released?
We would like to get it printed in the first half of October, so that the charities have then got the opportunity of selling the books in the run-up to Christmas. Where, there's no time limit on once they've got their books, they can take several years to sell them if they want to. We're suggesting that the books should be sold for £10 each, or, people can give more if they can afford it.
Lovely. Well, I think we should have another one of your poems, because you've got one out there that I particularly enjoyed, the Penguin Marriages poem. So I don't know, okay. Would you be happy to read that for us, Valerie?
This is quite long. Right, the headline of this one, and this was from iNews in March last year, 70% of penguin marriages end in divorce, says leading academic. He was such a handsome penguin. His back so black and sleek, his eyes so bright and roguish, so gleaming gold his beak, the flippers so curvaceous that bore him through the foam, his feet so neatly pedicured, a job he did at home. So how could she resist him when he flashed a beady glance and shuffled across the icy floe to make his first advance? They glided close together. "Oh, yes, yes, yes," she cried. It wasn't long before the pair were tucked up side by side. He told her that he loved her, that she ought to be his wife. A penguin mate's forever, and I'll be yours for life. A shortish interval expired, he'd flexed a muscled leg, before she woke to find she'd laid a great big shiny egg. Surprised, she said, "I didn't know things moved along so quick." But soon she was the mother of a handsome furry chick. It squeaked and squawked and peered about, kept pecking at her beak, while looking for its father, but the prospect there was bleak. Biologists will tell you that the father plays his part, but not every chilly penguin has a warm and caring heart. This icicled Lothario began to play away. He'd woo a different ladybird each sunlit snowy day. His mate declared the temperature may be right down at 0, but with the way you're treating me, you are no more my hero. She took him to the penguin court, the judge a herring gull, and sought with all the evidence her marriage to annul. So now she's free. She's raised the chick, and it's since quite grown up. And if she's ever wooed again, she'll ask for a prenup. Her handsome penguin now is tired of life in the Antarctic. He's grasped adultery as wrong, and divorce quite cathartic.
That's fantastic. I love as well that because we're sitting in your lovely garden here doing the interview, the herring gulls themselves are trying to get in on the action. There are even poems about the gulls in the book. So that works really well. This is going to be a fabulous book, I know it is, and I'm sure it will do extremely well for those charities. Do you think this could be the first of a series?
Well, I'm still writing poems because I can't stop. So possibly, if this is a success, we might do another one at some stage in the future.
Just give it a plug, remind us of the title of it, Valerie.
It's called Comic Cuttings and Quirky Quatrains.
Which is very satisfying in itself. All the very best with it, and thank you very much. Do keep us posted.
Thank you.
Manx Radio's 1 to 3, tended by Ramsey Garden Centre.